Which one of the 49ers rookies will make the biggest impact? Well, I think there's a couple of different ways to look at it. Is it going to be short term impact, long term impact, over the life of the contract, over the life of their career? We're going to talk about all that in this episode of 49ers Cutback.
From the alley-oops at Keysar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way. From off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Ready to talk about the rookie class. And some have told me that this rookie class could end up being one of the best the 49ers have had in the entire Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch era. And there's a lot of talent there. So I don't think it's far-fetched to believe that the 49ers might strike on some players that come from this draft. Now, what you're looking to do every single time that you have a draft is you're looking to get guys who are going to be able to make an impact on your football team the year they're drafted, but also down the life of their contract. Really, what you're trying to get is get at least 3 starters from each draft class that you have. You've got to continue to build the pipeline and make sure that you have players that are going to be able to help your football team. Got to make sure that you have guys ready to step up as you have decisions to be made, whether players are going to retire or players are potentially moving on because of contract reasons. You have to make sure a guy is ready to fill that role. And it can't be a player that you have a drop off. You want one or two things. You either want to get a player that's equal and stay the same way, or you want to get a player that's better. And the latter is the best way to go. Find a player that's better than the incumbent, that once they get ready, they can take over that position and help take your team to another level. Because one of the difficulties in the NFL is being able to manage salary caps, manage personalities, manage talent. It's a lot of work. And the 49ers are doing their best to try to figure this thing out. But they've got to make sure that they get the right guys to get it done. So drafting is so important. And the 49ers have done a good job, especially in the intermediate rounds, locating and drafting key players that are going to make an impact on their football team down the road. You just look at guys who they've gotten in the 5th round, guys who became starters, all the way from Dre Greenlaw in 2019 to Talanoa Hufanga in 2021, or even Deommodore Lenoir as a 5th round pick who steps in and starts. 49ers have been very good about locating talent that's going to start for their football team. Did they do that in the 2024 NFL draft? And when can we expect these guys to step up and make an impact on the team? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening on audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. From baseball, golf, soccer, right up to all the top fights in UFC, MMA, and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet Online, the game starts here. And this is an interesting conversation because you normally look towards the top of the draft, and that's where you're going to find the elite talent. And the 49ers struck on several positions in this draft. I think one of the more surprising picks came in the 1st round. And of course, if you were on the channel before, you know that I didn't think wide receiver was out of the question. In fact, I mocked wide receiver to the 49ers. But I did not mock this wide receiver, the 49ers selecting Ricky Pearsall. And Pearsall being picked 31 made sense once you've seen the run on wide receiver towards the beginning of the 2nd round. 49ers felt they weren't going to be able to wait being all the way back at pick 63 and being able to get the guy that they ultimately wanted to get. So the 49ers had to make a choice, and their choice was, we're going to stand pat and get a player that we have conviction on. Now, one of the things in determining whether a player is going to be able to have an impact on your football team early in their career has to go along with how many opportunities are they going to have to get out on the field and actually make plays. And at some positions, it's just tougher to get on the field. You're talking about offensive line, for instance, minus an injury as a rookie, you might not get on the field. There's no rotation. For a defensive lineman, it could be really easy to get on the field because they have constant rotations, players going in and out as they give everyone opportunities for you. When you're looking at all the positions, though, that doesn't always happen. For Ricky Pearsall, it's going to be opportunities for him to make plays because at wide receiver, players do rotate. Players do come out. Ayuk, Debo, Jawan, they sometimes need breaks, and that'll give Ricky Pearsall an opportunity. What else could help Ricky Pearsall get on the field is the fact that he could potentially play all the wide receiver spots. If he can play all the wide receiver positions, that means he's got versatility for them to be able to sub him in. He could be a legitimate fourth receiver where it doesn't matter which one of those top three guys is out for whatever reason, they could put Ricky Pearsall in. So opportunity is part of the name of the game. You get opportunity, then you can make some plays, and then you can make some impact. But another reason that you're going to have an opportunity to make an impact is if your skill set says that you can. Is your game polished enough? Is your game ready for the NFL? Do you have enough strength to hold up? Do you have enough physicality, or do you have enough toughness? What makes you be able to make an impact on the football team? And I think with Pearsall, the first thing you notice is the route running. The route running is elite. He's got really good footwork, really good hips. He gets in and out of his breaks, incredibly nice, soft hands. He's also got the ability to go up with that wingspan and get the football. He's not afraid of contact. He's just a player that you like. Now, what are some of the things that we have to see him be able to get better at to translate to the game? I would say physicality, playing through a defender, being able to run across the field and not get change of direction by guys giving you a check. So when players get hands on him, how physically is he going to play? We know he's tough. We know he can take contact, but can he physically be able to play through contact to get to the routes where he wants to get? Right now, there hasn't been any contact in minicamp. When we get to training camp is when we'll get a really good idea, when all of a sudden defensive players are passing him off, but they're checking him as he comes across the middle of the field. That's when we'll get a clear picture on if Pearsall's capable of making an impact. He's going to have opportunity, but knowing if he's going to have impact is a little bit harder. Now, Kyle Shanahan can scheme it up for Ricky Pearsall, use his elite route running, put him in the slot where he's not going to be pressed off the line of scrimmage, and he can have an opportunity to get some free releases and make some things happen. But to be a true receiver that can step in and make an impact, you're going to have to do a lot more than that. So how quickly can Ricky Pearsall make an impact on this team? I think that's a good question. And that's another question you have for Renardo Green. Renardo Green played outside corner at Florida State, and he's translating to play inside. And from everything that we've heard, he's done a pretty good job in that translation. They're actually very optimistic about him being able to translate to the position. Now, covering is not going to be an issue for Renardo Green. Renardo Green is a very good cover guy, but it's a little bit different playing at nickel in coverage than it is to playing outside. There's a transition because now you don't have a boundary. You don't have a sideline to use to your advantage as a cornerback. Sometimes when you're playing in your scheme, you can use that boundary to help you be able to squeeze off that route and be able to use it as a second defender. It really helps you. But now you're in a situation where, especially if you're in man coverage, you're on an island and you're in a situation where that guy can go inside and outside. And with that two-way go, that means you have to be able to flip your hips and run wherever he goes. You have to have good instincts. You have to make sure that even though he varies the distance of the route, that you don't lose track of him when you're in your drop. You make sure that your back pedal's controlled and that you're keeping that cushion. And then once he breaks, you're able to drive on it. So it's a tough situation to play for a young player. but he's not just playing cornerback. He's basically playing linebacker as well. And that's extremely difficult for a young player, especially because getting to know run fits is important. Knowing exactly what the front is looking like, knowing where the linebackers are going to be, will dictate what your hole is going to be that you're responsible for. The 49ers run a gap oriented defense, which means he's going to have a situation where he's going to have to account for a gap in the run game. In some cases, he'll be the outside guy and outside contain, and other times he'll have C gap responsibilities, which is a lot of times between the tight end and the tackle. And so, depending on formation, depending on look, he may be an alley defender. He may have a gap scheme. He may be a cutback guy where he's got to be there on the backside in case they cut back against the grain. So he's got pass first responsibilities, but then he's got run responsibilities on that. You're a cornerback who's also a linebacker. That's what the modern day nickel corner is doing. And I think for a guy that played outside, who's mainly a force defender and wants to force plays inside as that outside man, it's a little bit of a different responsibility now to have to come up and make a tackle as an alley defender, or come up and put your nose into a hole and try to take on a fullback or take on a running back that's ready to meet you in the hole. And some of these running backs aren't small. Now, one thing we know about Renardo Green, as far as physicality, as far as aggressiveness, he's got it. He's not afraid to come up with make contact. That's not going to be a part of his game that he struggles with. I just want to know how quickly he's going to be able to translate to understanding route concepts, being able to move with one accord with the other linebackers, and then stepping up, pulling that trigger and going up and making a tackle, staying home and not getting your eyes confused when the run game goes one way and you're start running the wrong way. You got to stay home and make sure you're there for the cutback. So I think there's some adjustments that are going to have to happen for Renardo Green before he can make an impact. So short-term impact, well, we'll talk about that in a second. Let's talk about Dominic Puni, another position where players don't rotate. So what is the actual opportunity going to be for pick number 86 in the NFL draft, Dominic Puni? I think this is a good question. He's translating from tackle to guard, which shouldn't be a huge transition after seeing what he did in the Senior Bowl, especially the Senior Bowl practices. He did a very good job. 49ers are moving him to right guard to compete with Spencer Burford. But where's the opportunity going to come from? We don't know for sure if John Feliciano is going to start at right guard or compete with Jake Brendel at center. But let's say he starts at right guard. Burford and Puni potentially are battling for backup right guard. That makes it a little bit more difficult for him to be able to even get on the field. Now, we do know that Aaron Banks is going to be an expiring contract. 49ers have showed that they have been willing to let interior offensive linemen go out on the market and then leave in free agency. Banks could potentially be the next one. Could Dominic Puni eventually step in at left guard and take over? And next year, you have Spencer Burford at right guard and you have Dominic Puni at left guard in 2025 as John Feliciano potentially retires and Aaron Banks hits free agency. That could be true. So what do opportunities look like for Dominic Puni in year one? Well, I think it all depends on the health of the guys ahead of him. If you got a situation where Banks isn't healthy, Banks suffers an injury, Dominic Puni might get an early opportunity that he normally wouldn't get because you're not the norm to get an offensive rotation. Now, I know in Spencer Burford's rookie season, he rotated with Daniel Brunskill. The reason Brunskill was injured for most of training camp, came back towards the end and then worked in with Spencer Burford. And they kind of just worked through series to series on who was going to be in and who was going to be out. And I think that helped Burford a lot in that season. But you don't normally want to do that because you want continuity with your offensive line. You want chemistry between your right tackle, your right guard, and your center. You want them used to playing with each other. You want them to understand what each call is, what each body movement is, and knowing that how players are going to play, you kind of work together, and you're able to kind of take the different movements of the defensive line. You get used to playing together, and you could just pass guys off. It's something different. It's a comfort factor that you probably don't have at any other position. You just get comfortable playing as a five-man unit, but also on one side of the ball. Guys become very close and understand each other's movements, each other's sounds, each other's hand gestures, everything, so you can signal, talk, and express what you need to do without ever even really stating a word. And so I think that that's going to be something interesting to watch, how they work in Dominic Puni. So in the short term, I don't know if Dominic Puni is even going to have an opportunity to get on the field and make an impact. So we know Pearsall is. Don't know about Renardo Green. Isaac Yedem on the scene. Renardo Green might need an injury to get on the field short term. Then you look at Dominic Puni. He's going to need an injury to get on the field short term. Same with Malik Mustafa. Really like Malik Mustafa. I think he's just got all that muscle. He's just built for playing NFL football, and he's a juggernaut when it comes to making contact, but a real intelligent player who understands what he's looking at. You go back and you watch his college film, and the way that his defensive coordinator used him was in a unique role that couldn't work for any other player on that football team. And the fact that he was able to do that and have great success with that coach basically building an entire position for him means he's got a innate ability to not just win in the box, but win in the secondary, but to be used in a unique way compared to other players that were in this draft. So I think the 49ers targeted him. They know the intelligence is something they like. If you look at football intelligence, Talanoa Hufanga is one of the most football intelligent players the 49ers have on their roster, who plays with extreme instincts. And I think they got somebody like that with Mustafa. Well put together, very intelligent, understands his role. I think he's going to understand this 49ers defense. But what is his opportunity going to be? Well, it depends on Hufanga. Hufanga is not going to be ready week one. Malik Mustafa might be able to get in there. Now, I think George Odom will probably step in and play next to Jair Brown, minus them getting a wild hair and going ahead and signing a free agent because maybe Hufanga's not ready. Then potentially that pushes Odom back. But Mustafa, because of the way that we've seen injuries in the safety room over the last several years, there could be an opportunity for his name to be called. It was last year that Taylor Hawkins came off the practice squad and got a start. Now, I know they're arresting their veteran players, but you got opportunities when they come, and injuries can sometimes produce opportunities, and none of us are hoping that an injury is going to come the way of the 49ers, especially in the secondary, or that Hufanga is going to be delayed in his recovery. But Malik Mustafa could have short-term opportunities to make plays. Now, as you move down the draft board, it gets a little bit more difficult to predict, especially short-term success. Now, you know, if you've been watching all my content, that I think Jacob Cowan could have an opportunity here or there to make a play with his ability on special teams as a return guy, but his real good quickness. You might find some key matchups you like for him in certain situations. So I think it's very limited impact, but he could make it because wide receiver, positions where you can get in even as wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6. There could be opportunities for you because of matchup and because you just consistently rotate players through 2, 3, 4 wide receiver sets. Those give you opportunities. So Cowing is a little bit of the outlier of the next guys we're going to talk about, because a guy like Isaac Guerendo may have zero opportunity. He might not even be active for games early on in this year when you have Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, and Jordan Mason, who have been doing it in this system for a long time. Elijah Mitchell going into year 4. You got Christian McCaffrey going into year 3. I know he's only played 1.5 years for the 49ers, but year 3 being in the building and knowing this system. Jordan Mason going into year 3 knowing this system. So it's going to be hard for Isaac Guerendo to even have a chance to crack any sort of a starting lineup, let alone get any carries in a game. If Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason struggle to get carries, a rookie running back is going to really struggle to get carries. So short-term wise, I don't think Isaac Guerendo can make an impact on the San Francisco 49ers, especially 2024, minus one situation. If he's able to return kicks at a high level. If he's able to corral kicks and then run really well as far as kick return with the new kickoff rules, that would be an opportunity for Isaac Guerendo to actually get on the active roster and be able to make an impact in 2024. Minus that special teams opportunity, I don't think we're going to hear from Guerendo in 2024 very much. I think he's got a better shot down the road, and we'll talk about that in 1 second. Jarrett Kingston, I think, is likely to end up on the practice squad, so I don't think 2024 is an impact season for him. I think he'll go to the practice squad, learn, develop, get better at run blocking, and then potentially come in. Banks is going to be leaving. Feliciano is going to be leaving. What will happen with Jake Brendel? Don't know. That's the opportunity for Kingston to come in with Burford and with Dominic Puni and be able to set up a new interior offensive line for the San Francisco 49ers. And then Tatum Bethune. Bethune's going to have a tough time making this team. I like Tatum Bethune a lot. I think he brings a lot to the linebacker room. He's very smart. He's very quick, understands what he's supposed to do, which quickness is interesting because he's not exactly the fastest when it comes to 40, but you watch him on the field, he's football fast. So he's going to have a tough time, though. You talk about the linebackers you have there, Campbell, Fred Warner, D. Winters, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, Jalen Graham. You just got lots of guys that are going to be there. Could he squeeze in as linebacker 6? Yes. But we saw D. Winters, 6th-round pick last year, Jalen Graham, 7th-round pick. Their only chances on the field were playing in mop-up time or playing in special teams. So I just don't know. So I think when you're looking at the short-term impact, who could have the biggest impact on the 49ers in the short term, I think it's Ricky Pearsall. He's got more opportunities than the other guys. He's more polished than the other guys right now. So I think in 2024, that could be the time where Ricky Pearsall can make the biggest impact. And even then, how big will that impact be, I think is a good question. If Brandon Ayuk's contract gets worked out, if Deebo Samuel stays healthy, if Jawan Jennings continues to do what he does, then the opportunities are going to be few and far between. But just go back and watch Ray McLeod's opportunities over the last couple of years. He didn't always seize those opportunities. If Pearsall can seize those opportunities, he can make a big impact. And I've seen a lot of times where Ray McLeod was open and maybe Brock threw it to George Kittle in front of Ray all the time. But those could be opportunities for Ricky Pearsall. And we have heard that Pearsall and Brock have a really good rapport together. So I think that's good news. So I think short term, it's Ricky Pearsall being able to make an impact. Now, I think when it comes to over the life of the contract, the player that I'm looking at that can make the biggest impact for the 49ers is Renardo Green. And here's why. Renardo Green's coming into a situation where he's learning to play nickel. But we've already established that he can play outside corner at a high level. We've seen it in college. He went out there and battled some of the best wide receivers that college football had to offer. But here's why. You have Deommodore Lenoir, who has not signed a contract extension going into the last year of his deal. You have Charvarius Ward, who's one of the highest paid cornerbacks in the league, going into the last year of his contract. And if you have to decide between the two, you might decide to go with Deommodore Lenoir. If you do that and you pay him a little bit less, or you would pay him a lot less than you pay Charvarius Ward, and you decide to let Ward go because of financial responsibilities in other positions, you need Renardo Green to step up. And that could mean a starting job at outside corner opposite of Deommodore Lenoir in year 2. And if that's the case over the life of the contract, he will have so much value to the 49ers over those 3 seasons. So you'd have the rookie season 2024, but then after that, 3 seasons as a starter, 25, 26, 27, could bridge the gap until you get the next wave of cornerbacks that come in that could potentially make an impact. He'd have to, of course, beat out Darrell Luter Jr., but even if Darrell Luter Jr. ended up being the outside corner for the 49ers and Renardo Green stayed inside at nickel, you still got a guy that's going to be on the field for you 70 to 75% of the snaps. So I think over the life of the contract, he could be the next best beneficial. So I think Pearsall in 2024, and then maybe for the life of the contract, it actually ends up being Renardo Green over Pearsall, even though as Deebo's contract comes up, as Jennings' contract comes up, Pearsall's opportunities will become more significant, and he will have a 5th-year option that he'll be able to use. Now, when it comes to guys who can make impact in year 2, I think Dominic Puni and Malik Mustafa could have opportunities to start in year 2. I think depending on what happens with Aaron Banks, which I believe that's why I kind of thought they were going to put Puni at left guard. That would give him an opportunity to step in and compete. I know they want him pushing Burford, but just preparing for when Banks goes ahead and moves on. And it's not uncommon for what they did, right? Banks' rookie year, he had played left guard at Notre Dame. They moved him over to right guard and had him play behind Daniel Brunskill. He was never able to eclipse him, never able to really push him. So you got Puni, who normally plays the left side, going to right. He's going to play right guard. But eventually could take over for Banks, the way Banks took over for Laken Tomlinson. So pipeline. You go from Tomlinson to Banks, now hopefully to Dominic Puni in 2025. You potentially just keep going, and that's how you just keep your team relevant, is not having to pay big contracts for interior offensive linemen, but getting guys who could stabilize. Now, Puni hopefully could actually be better than Aaron Banks when he's ready to go. But I think Mustafa is kind of in a similar situation. What is going to happen contract-wise with Talanoa Hufanga? Hufanga coming off an ACL. I haven't heard anything about the 49ers discussing a contract extension with Hufanga. And if Hufanga leaves in free agency, then Malik Mustafa may have to step in and play next to Jair Brown. So 49ers creating that pipeline, and they need it. And of course, next year they would have to draft another safety unless they signed a free agent and potentially just keep this ball rolling. Jair Brown would be going to year 3 in 2025, Malik Mustafa year 2. Both those guys on 4-year deals. You draft somebody to eventually heir apparent to Jair. Maybe the 49ers have something to this. So I think when you're looking at the short-term answer, it's Ricky Pearsall. Over the life of the contract, I think it's going to be Renardo Green. And then when you look at what happens over year 2, I think you get 2 more starters in Malik Mustafa potentially and in Dominic Puni. So imagine that. I don't think Ricky Pearsall starts in year 2 because I don't think he eclipses the top 3 guys. I don't know if they're going to trade Debo. I think that's something to be determined. I think Ayuk will be here on a new contract, still holding out hope. So Pearsall is probably year 3 when he becomes a starter. So he's going to have to wait a little bit longer to become a starter, but 49ers potentially, with those top 4 selections, could have starters by year 3, have 4 new starters for their football team. Well, I told you, if you get 3 from a draft class, that's deemed very successful. Now, you could have 4 potentially if they all reach expectation. That's the key. They've got to reach expectation. Now, after that, I think Garendo, after this season in 2024, opportunities step up in 2025. Because we know Christian McCaffrey's not going anywhere anytime soon. But Elijah Mitchell is probably going to leave in free agency in 2025, which means Isaac Garendo opportunities. Jordan Mason will be a restricted free agent. The 49ers will have a decision to make there. I'm guessing they keep him for 2025, and then Garendo steps into that backup running back role in 2026 officially. So that's what they're working towards. And of course, it's going to be a lot of work. So Garendo's going to have to wait. Now, just like with all positions, if you go out there and prove that you're better than what everyone thinks you are, you're going to get more opportunities. And then with that elite speed, he's got game-breaking ability. So 49ers will definitely want him to show up and want him to make an impact. It's going to be difficult with the guys ahead of him. So year 3 is where I'm seeing Garendo potentially being able to make an impact for the 49ers in the run game. But like I said before, special teams, I think he's going to have more of an opportunity. I think Jacob Cowing, same thing with Ricky Pearsall. They're going to be waiting in line. But as those top 3 guys, potentially somebody moves on, those guys kind of move up. Cowing can carve out a serious role for himself as far as catching screens, being able to be used in fly sweeps, reverses, also getting in and out of breaks against bigger nickels could be situations for him. And then, just like Isaac Garendo, special teams. So special teams, gadget plays could be Jacob Cowing's niche over the next 2 seasons before there's an opportunity for him to step up into wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, depending on what contracts look like. Jared Kingston could get his opportunity next year in 2025 with all the potential contract situations that are going on up front, with Feliciano moving on, Banks potentially moving on, maybe even moving on from Brendel. 49ers might need a Jared Kingston to step up. And let's see if the 49ers keep him at guard, where he would battle against Burford, where he battle against Puni, or if they try him at center. It could be an interesting dynamic with his athleticism. He's a pretty good pass blocker, needs to get better run blocking. And then Tatum Bethune, I don't know. I don't know when he gets on the team. I'd like to see him step up and have a really good season, be able to produce on special teams. That way we have 3 young linebackers that we really like between D. Winter, Jalen Graham, and Tatum Bethune. That next wave of linebackers that you could feel comfortable with that could keep this linebacker room going for a while. We'll see what happens with Dre with his new contract, but I think we got some guys for the 49ers that can make an impact. And who will make the biggest impact? I think in 2024, it's going to be Ricky Pearsall. I think by 2025 and 2026, it's going to be Renardo Green. And then as you continue to move forward, that's when Dominic Puni, Malik Mustafa are going to have real opportunities to help as well. So Pearsall in 2024, 2025, 2026, Renardo Green making the biggest impact for the San Francisco 49ers. Of course, I hope Ricky Pearsall is the guy that just blows up and dominates. I hope him and Renardo Green become Pro Bowlers. That would really change the game. But thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. The listening audio platform 49ers Cutback on Believe. This episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. And remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.